This is Lotus, and if you didn't know that, it's honestly just a bit of a shocking performance out of you. Attackers spawn here, and from spawn there are 7 common attack strategies in Soloqueue. Straight to A to B, straight to B, B to A, B to C, straight to C, and C to B. Now, despite there being 7 attack strategies, there are only 3 places you need to care about on defense, and that's A main, B main, and C main. The reason for this is that no matter where the attackers choose to go, they're forced to pass through one of these areas. When we think about Valorant maps from an analyst's perspective, we usually think about them in terms of the lanes they can be divided into. Now, a simple way to think about lanes is as the most useful spaces on the map to control. And given what we talked about before, it makes sense that on Lotus, the 3 lanes are A main, B main, and C main. Now, with that in mind, I want to introduce you to the main idea of this video. We're going to watch a 30-second clip of Loud versus Fnatic on Lotus, and spoiler alert, but Loud are doing a very convincing B to C, and they're going to end up getting the spike down on C. And while watching, what I want you to think about is how does the game change in terms of what space matters when the spike gets planted. Alright, let's start by looking at the minimap. I just want you to look at where everyone is. We see Viper and Raze up in... Wait, what is that place called? Viper and Raze are up in C Hall, Astra's in C Waterfall, and Killjoy's in Defender Side Spawn. So, now that you're looking at this, and also just know that these are 2 of the best teams in the world, I want to ask you a question. Does C main matter, or B main, or A main at this point in the game? Not a particularly hard test, that one. The answers are A main, no, B main, no, C main, yeah. A follow-up question for you. What does matter on this map, other than C main? What are the places that matter on this map? And the answer is, unsurprisingly, where the pro players are looking. So that's attacker side spawn, that's C Waterfall, and it's C Hall. Now, you might have a couple questions. You might be thinking, but Matt, what about doors? No, that was you. And yes, doors are important, but the reason I left them out is because watching and contesting the space outside of doors, particularly in a 3v4 scenario, is not very useful. Why? Well, because contesting the space around doors without guaranteed knowledge of an enemy behind them, it's essentially staring at a wall that gives you anxiety. There are infinitely more useful things you could be doing in a 3v4 scenario. The spaces that matter are the ones that are immediate threats to C-site. What you're trying to avoid as a defender is having an attacker breach a choke point onto site. Hence, C Hall matters, C Waterfall matters, and attacker side spawn matters, particularly without information, particularly on the pistol, because controlling it gives you control of this choke point and prevents flanks. Picture for a second that the map looked a little bit more like this. The attackers have control of Waterfall, they have control of Hall. If Astra decides to flank, Jet will know. If Astra does doors, Jet will know. All 3 choke points are controlled without being contested. It's a multi-layered post-plant setup. And what I mean by that is that no matter where they go, defenders have to break 2 choke points in order to even get on to C-site, and that takes time. And meanwhile, the attackers are able to hold each of these choke points in a non-committal way. They're able to be fluid, and they're threatening flanks. This position is the attacker's checkmate. About a minute ago, I asked you to think about how planting a spike affects what spaces on the map are important. Before the spike is planted, the only spaces on the map that matter are A main, B main, and C main. Whoever has control of these spaces has control of the sites. If we put arrows on the map that display the direction of conflict, you'll see that pre-spike plant, the lanes of conflict are vertical. They're on the y-axis. We just discovered that for a C plant at least, once the spike gets put down, the spaces that matter become C Hall, C Waterfall, and flank. Whoever has control of these spaces will win the round. Now, if we put these same directional arrows again, you'll see that the traffic of play has rotated 90 degrees. It's now on the x-axis. So the fundamental hypothesis of this video is that the best way to think about Lotus is as a cross-intersection with traffic lights. It starts off as green for the drivers on the y-axis, and then once the spike gets planted, it goes green for the x-axis drivers. And on the x-axis, whoever has the fastest reaction time to the light going green and takes the most space has the best chance of winning. If attackers take the horizontal space first, the defenders have to break through 2 choke points through a barrage of utility, and they're on a timer. If the defenders take the space first, they can attack site from multiple angles at once, and the retake is just completely free. Using this knowledge, if we look back at the game between Fnatic and Loud, just based off the minimap, I bet you could accurately predict who's going to win the round. Fnatic has taken 2 out of the 3 most important spaces and is capable of exploding onto site from 2 different angles. Therefore, the round is an easy win for them. And you'd be right if you said that. Fnatic steamroll onto site and get 3 kills for 1. In order for this to be useful for Soloqueue, we also need to understand what space matters on the other 2 sites. And luckily for you, it's really easy to figure out. All you got to do is think about where the defenders can approach a site post-plant and identify where you can go to prevent them from getting them. On B, the spaces that matter post-plant are main, contesting this choke here, C link, A link, and B upper. And now the conventional advice of don't plant the spike on B unless it's a last resort should make some sense now, because it's very hard to take all of those spaces as an attacker. On A, the spaces that matter are defender side spawn, which you should hold from top and stairs, this choke here in A main, and doors, again, only if they are opened. If you're playing on site, play in a position where you can react to doors being opened, but don't necessarily sit and watch them because it's wasting resources. Now, again, the conventional advice for always contest A should make more sense. Defenders can come from 3 places. One of them is doors, which is heavily telegraphed, and it also funnels into a choke point. One of them is an extremely exposed choke point that funnels directly into another extremely exposed choke point, and the last one is a desert with no cover that can be contested from multiple angles. If attackers get hold of A and are able to take space there, it is very, very hard to break. So to finish up, I just want to briefly touch on how you should apply this traffic light method of thinking to win your ranked games. And the main idea here is that as an attacker, it is completely okay, no, it's encouraged to run red lights in-game. And what I mean by that is that you have to be proactive with taking the space that matters post-plant before the spike is even planted. If you're planting on C and you're playing Phoenix, as the spike planter begins planting, or even before, walk up, pop flash C Hall, and take that space. If you do this, you will have won the race before the light even went green, and your chances of winning the round go up drastically. And you can do this on every single site, and you should do this on every single site in Soloqueue. I don't care what agent you're playing, so long as you're not the one planting. You should be sneaking up, you should be proactive, you should be taking space. You don't need to do it every round, you don't even need your team to come with you, but every so often, you do need to be proactive, and you do need to take that space. On defense, you can't really run red lights so much as predict green ones. You have to be unbelievably proactive with your rotates. If the spike gets planted on A and you're on C, you've lost your team the round, because while you're knife out rotating, you're not contesting the spaces that will win you the round. If you're fast enough, you can be the one catching attackers as they are trying to take the space. As a defender in the post-plant scenario, if you have control of all of the spaces that lead onto a site, you should win the round. Finally, I haven't talked about pre-plant at all in this video, and that's mostly because there are so many other guides that cover it. But the big idea, just in case you haven't watched any of those, is that A main is king. Have lots of people contesting and absolutely just send your util. In that pro game between Fnatic and Loud, almost every single round, at least like 3 or 4 agents on each team would dump util A main and try to take the space there. It's really important that you do this like every round. The reason for that, again, is because as an attacker, if you get onto A fast, it's just like an insta win. It's like insanely OP. And that's everything. Now you understand how lanes work with their 90-degree traffic light rotations. You understand how to abuse this by running the red light on attack and jamming the accelerator on your rotates on defense, and hopefully you should be able to use these strategies to win some games. I hope you had a good day. See you in the next one.